Well, the latter part of May sure has dropped a bunch of records on here, from Mystery, from The Ocean, from Arjen Lucas's Supersonic Revolution, and now we come into Sleep Token, and this is one that's taken me a little bit of time to get my teeth into, a little bit of time to really, find all the nooks and crannies in it, but yeah, I think I'm ready to talk about it. Let's dive into it. Take Me Back to Eden by Sleep Token. So Sleep Token is a UK. I think they're from Britain or London. How do I even classify these guys? I guess they're eclectic metal. I guess that would be the best way that I could, moniker them. I've seen this band be labeled as alternative metal, progressive metal, post-metal, indie pop of all things. I would even go so far as to say like trap metal or like R&B metal at times. These guys, they take a bunch of different genres and a bunch of different musical expressions and kind of put them all into a I don't want to say blender and I don't want to say melting pot, because they still keep all of the iterations of those musical genres and musical styles together. And it's kind of like serving a pizza where you can see all the toppings, all the ingredients right on top of it, instead of it being all mixed around into a slurry or a milkshake, kind of an idea. These guys do everything from gent to trap music to R&B to alternative to indie to pop to dream pop. Not even between songs, but actually within tracks themselves as well. Now, this is their third album after their first two records, Sundowning, released in November of 2019, and This Place Will Be Your Tomb, released September of 2021. And I've missed out on this band. This is a brand new band for me. This is the first time I've listened to them, and their whole mythos is very similar to what a couple of bands are doing. I mean, the most notable one being Ghost, where they're all kind of anonymous. They're all these anonymous individuals going by the name of Vessel, so you got Vessel 1, 2, 3, and 4 making up the band themselves, performing in costumes and in masks, so you don't really have whoever it is with there. And the whole mythos is like these are offerings to sleep, to Morpheus, to tokens to sleep, hence Sleep Token. I can get on that. I really like a band with a good mythos. I like a band with a good catch, like a good hook, a good persona. It's something that I feel like a lot more bands need to embrace in order to kind of put themselves above the rest. Let's get into the actual music that's found on here. As I mentioned, it's not necessarily a melting pot of musical stylings, but it is definitely a buffet. It's definitely an all-you-can-eat buffet. And for most of it, I would say that it is serviceable. There are moments here and there that I think are quite nice and quite pleasant, and I really do, as a prog lover myself, I really love this kind of musical variations. I do wish that they kind of infused the different parts and really blended those different parts together, rather than having really genty part right here and then moving into an indie pop movement right here and then going into a trap beat rap section right over here. I almost wish that they kind of blended those all together so that we would get something new, something fresh, instead of having these little bite chunks of things that we already kind of know about and kind of already have. So in that case, when it hits hard, it hits really hard. And this has some of the best like metal music on here. The first track of Chokehold really opens up with this brilliant guitar lick that, again, it just grabs onto me and holds me down. It's a literal chokehold. The title track is Chokehold, and it's got this and when we got to the second and third track, The Summoning and Granite, I realized that, man, we are at the stage now where the music from like the later 2010s, or even in the 2020s themselves, are starting to influence the music that we're getting now. So, the big monster that is the imaginary dragon, Imagine Dragon D's no, are starting to really showcase and influence the music of today. And The Summoning and Granite really do have that like Imagine Dragons feel of it, that slow, heavy, energetic, powerful movements. But for me, kind of taste a little bit like a nothing sandwich at the end of it. Like it's all flash and flare without any actual substance behind it. And this really comes to a head in the third track of Aqua Regia, I think is how you pronounce it, Aqua Regia. It leaves me... It reminds me of when I was in middle school and high school, and I was really into bands like Limp Bizkit and loving that kind of beginning styles of new metal. And bands like Linkin Park were starting to enter the fold, and a lot of my friends were just tripping over themselves to get these records and loving them and saying, you know, you love Limp Bizkit so much, you gotta listen to these guys. These are the next cutting edge. This is where music is going to go. And I listened to it, and I got nothing from it. You know, I'm listening to it, and I'm like, yeah, that's music, you know, but I didn't really feel anything about it, you know. It was taking all these different styles of music, and because they were doing so much of it well, but nothing really well, it never really felt like its own thing. It always felt like a conglomeration of all these different parts that were trying to work together. And I say that knowing full well that that was kind of what Limp Bizkit was doing, but at least with Limp Bizkit, I don't know, it felt like they were doing something new and doing something fresh and doing something fun. And maybe that's why, because, you know, Limp Bizkit still had that very tongue-in-cheek, very fun aspect. And there's nothing really fun here on Sleep Token. I mean, and that's coming into Vor, and I mean, the drive, the passion, and the heaviness of Vor. Like, this is where I started to get excited, and I'm like, okay, this is the kind of music that I can get along to. And I think part of the reason why I like Vor so much, the song is because they really root themselves into the one genre of this really speed, aggressive technical metal. You know, you got that blast beats, you got the screaming and yelling, and I really gravitate towards that kind of stylings. But a lot of these other tracks that I've already mentioned so far, because they're doing so much in so little time, I don't know, I don't really find myself gravitating towards that. Case in point, you know, Ascensionism, the sixth track being one of the longer tracks at 7 minutes, it allows me to sink my teeth into, and this is probably my favorite track off of the album. And part of it is that progression of sound. They're kind of servicing and using those styles. You know, the first part of the song is very dream pop, very soundscapey. The second part, we have a little bit more of that trap beat, a little bit more of that R&B, goes into this very symphonic rock aspect. So it's very big, very loud, but each progression goes very naturally, and it services each part of that progression, so that by the time we're halfway through the track is huge, it's big, so that by the time they can use that momentum to go into that really heavy, really metal like crescendo that I really find myself loving, to dip down a little bit, you know, take this track back into itself, to have a final crescendo, a final explosion of music. And this is where I'm starting to get glimmers of where people are loving this album. You know, I'm starting to get flavors, I'm starting to get aspects of it that I'm like, okay, now I'm really getting into it. And I can really groove along. I love the blending of different genres, and I feel like in this case, it's starting to work. Unfortunately, we get into kind of like the big single off of this album, which is Are You Really Okay? And I'm not a big fan of this track, you know. Like, I understand why it's here. It's very popular. It's very accessible. It feels very like a singer-songwriter track, but I'm not sure if I'm here for it. And I do feel like once we got past the Are You Really Okay, I feel like the rest of the album just kind of treads water for a little bit without really adding anything else to the mix. The Apparition is fine. The ninth track, which is like condensed, but do you wish that you love me? Oh boy. Rain, Take Me Back to Eden, the title track. And the last track of Ecluid, I think it is. Ecluid. I think it is. Ecluid. Yeah, it just kind of continues to tread water. Take Me Back to Eden, the actual title track, it does a lot of what Ascensionism tries to do, but let's talk about the elephant in the room, the thing that I've been kind of skirting over the past little bit, or however long this review is going to be. The lyrical content, the actual lyrical content on this album. Oh boy. Yeah. Yeah, it's not good. These boys are talented in terms of their musicianship. You know, I'll give them that. Their genre blending, genre bending, fantastic. You know, like these guys are really able to capture the spirit of each of the genres and styles of music that they're going for. You know, and they do it very, very well. The production side as well, extremely, extremely beautiful. You know, listening to this on a good pair of headphones really captured a good spirit. You know, the overlays, the mixing, I can hear everything crystal clear. It's almost a little too clear for the style of music that they're presenting, but I will give it a pass because I'd much rather have a too polished than not polished enough. Some of the effects that they're using on the vocals, though, I don't know how much it is that Vessel, the singer, is like actually presenting and how much of it is doctored or manipulated. There are definitely moments on here, specifically on Rain, some other tracks on here that I could tell there's some vocal manipulations. But there's a few moments where I'm like, especially when he's doing some of the lower ranges, where I'm like, I'm not quite sure if that is manipulated or changed. I wouldn't be surprised. That lyrical content, man. Oh boy. And this is coming from somebody that used to love and still loves, you know, a lot of the emo music like My Chemical Romance and Bullet for My Valentine. And, you know, so I'm not new when it comes to this very emo, very heartfelt, very poignant, love related, love yearning styles of lyrical content. But this is getting right into like, my guy, you do need to see somebody. And that somebody is a therapist. You know, with a lot of these, you know, lyrical content of like right in that track of "Do you wish that you loved me?" I'd rather be 6 feet underground than alone. Yeah. This is like the teenage screaming for help kind of an aspect. And it is one of those, like, if you are actually given what you think you want, which is the love of this person, you're ultimately going to be very dissatisfied because what you really need to do is fix what's in. And so when you're leaning on this other person to try to fix those things that's wrong with you, and they're not able to do so because of course they're not able to do so, you're going to be frustrated and mad at them for not fixing what you thought needed to be fixed. And that's where bad relationships come from. So you gotta check yourself before you wreck yourself. If you obtain and find solace in this lyrical content, if you find that this has helped you, all the power to you. You know, I used to get solace, you know, I reference Limp Bizkit, you know, when I used to be that angsty teen, I would go to Limp Bizkit and yeah, I would feel better after listening to those things. I listened to Steven Wilson, so I know how depressive lyrics can make you feel better, you know, but I also went through a hell of a lot of therapy. And I feel like Vessel needs that therapy. So, yeah, that I think at the end of the day is what's really, really holding me back in terms of really enjoying this album and really connecting with those albums. As I mentioned, when these tracks hit hard, they hit extremely hard. Ascensionism, brilliant. 10 out of 10. Love that track. Vor, it's a banger. You know, I'm loving how heavy and how aggressive and how insane that track is. But at the end of the day, I'm starting to realize that this isn't necessarily made for me. And that's fine. So in the end, let's wrap all this guys up because this review is taking way too long. Apparently I had a lot to say about this album. In the end, this is a little bit of a mixed grab bag. As I mentioned, when this album hits, it hits hard, but when this album misses, it falls flat. The lyrical content needs a lot of work, but, you know, I think that's a feature of this album, and, you know, the fan base is coming to this album for that specific aspect of it, rather than it being a flaw within the system and what's holding me back from enjoying it. Rating this one is rather hard, but I think at the end of the day, I will say, Take Me Back to Eden by Sleep Token is one that I would ultimately stream. I wouldn't necessarily say skip this album entirely. There's something on this album to annoy everybody, I think. You know, there's something on this album that will really grind the gears of people. But that being said, I think that this album will find its audience, and it clearly already has, and it's going to connect very, very deeply with some. I can see this making a lot of top 10 at the end of the year albums. This one is going to be one of the more interesting albums for me at the end of the year. It definitely won't make my top 10 or anything like that, but it definitely will make like those albums that made me think, those albums that I was like, huh, that's interesting, because it's a very unique album from a very unique band. So I think I'm going to leave it there. What do you guys think about this album? Did you love it? Did you hate it? It's been out for about a week and a half or so, so I think everybody's had their time to kind of digest it and enjoy it. Honestly, if you're liking this, I feel like what these boys are trying to do is very similar to what Devin Townsend did with Empath, where it was a blending of genres, a blending of different things, all kind of centered around and circling around that metalcore aspect. But I feel like Devin Townsend rooted that into the empathetic, relating to individuals and dealing with mental illness. And these guys are dealing with it in a little bit more of a, I hate to use this term, but it fits, this very incel style of lyrical content. And, right? So if you enjoy this and you haven't already checked out Devin Townsend's Empath, that's my recommendation. Go check out Devin Townsend Empath, because after listening to this, I immediately ran and re-listened to that 2020 album that just, man, it was so good. And it still is so good. So yeah, let me know all about what you thought about this album by commenting down below. Let me know how I'm wrong, because I'm sure I ruffled a few feathers in this album review. But yeah, I think that's all I've got for you guys today. So thank you all so much for watching. As always, you guys are definitely the best. And until next time, notes out.